Hello, everyone. This is Dr. J, host of the Sexuality Space. Welcome. My silent co host, Misha Elliott, virtual assistant, and all around, I can do it all. We'll be working behind the scenes to organize our business for today. For those of you listening to the replay, the Sexuality Space is live every Wednesday, noon Eastern, on Twitter. Here, I've created a sex positive community where we talk about different sex topics, meet CEOs of sex companies, sex educators, researchers, and writers. Now, I want you to see me doing my work in the daylight as I integrate sexuality into everyday life. And I'm delighted you're here listening. As a reminder, this is a recorded space which will live on the Twitter timeline, and it's repurposed on my website, on my FlowGen playlist, and on YouTube. Please note that the space is equipped with its own chat feature in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can ask questions there as the space goes along. Last week, what did we do last week? We met with the co-founder of The Body Deck, Gabby Jockers, and discussed how being a boudoir photographer inspired the cards, and they are quite lovely and quite fascinating. This week, our theme will be pleasure. What is sensory pleasure, and how does that help our quality of sexual life? So, hello, Misha. Hello, Ramon. Ramon, feel free to request the mic. I've got some things that I'm just going to lay out in the first part of the conversation here, and then we can chat and see what's what. So to start with, it's been interesting that the week that I've had has totally centered on pleasure, and so it's kind of exciting to know that. The universe is supporting all of the different things that I'm doing. So, as a sex educator, I always start with what are things that I can tell you that are important to know about how your body works. So, I went to the Global Advisory Board for Sexual Health and Well-Being, and one of the things that I'm really excited to see about the work that they're doing is that they want to establish sexual pleasure as a starting point for a broader and positive focus on sexuality and sexual health. And when we do that, it helps people to make informed decisions about sexual relationships and avoid risks. So when we talk about sexual well being and pleasure and rights, it's beneficial to all people. So whether you're a provider of this kind of information or the recipient of this kind of information, this helps you focus in on sexual health is important, sexual pleasure is important, and your sexual rights are important. Now, one of the things that I really like that they talk about is that they support the idea that we should have physical and psychological satisfaction and enjoyment. And that's everybody, regardless of your age, your sexual orientation, your gender identity, your expression, race, ethnicity, disability practices, socioeconomic background, HIV status, or any other characteristic. You can enjoy your sexuality in the way that you choose. It's also important to have self-determination, and that means that we have the capacity to make the free choices regarding our sexuality. We also have the idea of consent, that we actively agree to have sex or engage in sexual activity. And we want to make sure that safety is an element that encompasses both physical and emotional safety in relationships, but it also refers to safer sex, and that would be condom use, contraception, all of the things to take care of yourself, PrEP and PEP. But the other thing that's really important is that you have a sense of privacy, that you have time and space in your life that is private to you, and you can choose for that to be alone, or you can choose to invite someone to be in that space. But you feel safe in the fact that you have created that privacy for yourself. The other thing is confidence, feeling comfortable in our own sexuality and feeling good about the decisions that we are partaking in our own sex life. And then the last item that the Global Advisory Board for Sexual Health and Wellbeing focuses on is communication and negotiation. And so communicating openly about sex and sexuality and discussing expectations, what you want, what they want, what somebody doesn't want, all of those things are important, and especially focusing in on the idea of pleasure. And you may wonder, why in the world would I be talking about pleasure as a component standing alone on its own? But if I think about all the years, 47, that I've been in the field, this has probably been the topic that has been least focused on early on, because it wasn't something that we could really address. And we see that specifically when we look at folks who have clitoral bodies that haven't been told that the only function of that part of their body is to provide pleasure, much less, how we can equalize and look at equality for sexuality. And that was one of the things that Dr. Laurie Mintz talked about. I think that was 2-3 weeks ago when we interviewed her. So we're now in the month of February, and February seems to be the place where everybody starts thinking about pleasure, because we have the constructed holiday of Valentine's Day. So we start thinking about gifts and presents and sensuality, and how can I, be with myself and be with someone else. And it's that time where we start to consider that pleasure can be a source of delight or joy. And, we have our skin, and we can look at our skin as an origin point. But it's important that we understand that for sex to feel pleasurable, our brain has to interpret sexual sensations as pleasurable. So we know that there are nerves in the sexual area of the body with specific signals that they send to the brain, and then the brain uses those signals to create various sexual sensations. So, for example, we have neurotransmitters, who are the chemical messengers that help the brain communicate with other body areas, and they have a role in sexual pleasure. So, for the first one is prolactin, and this is a chemical that rises immediately following orgasm. And this hormone might be related to reduced sexual response, which may explain the refractory period for men. After an orgasm occurs, there can be a space of time before your body is able to go through a response cycle again. Dopamine is another neurotransmitter, and it's linked to motivation and reward. And it increases sexual arousal, and the body secretes it during the desire stage. Oxytocin, which is also known as the love or the bonding hormone, promotes feelings of intimacy and closeness, and the body releases this after orgasm. The body also releases serotonin, which supports feelings of well-being and happiness, and this can occur in the arousal phase. Norepinephrine dilates and constricts blood vessels and makes the genitals more sensitive, and the body releases this during sexual stimulation. So when we think about this, is the chemical body response to what we are feeling and what we connect with, we have to ask ourselves, well, what are the sensory things that provide us pleasure that our body is going to respond to? And I think about this from the idea of, where do you experience your pleasure? And so sensory pleasure is looking at the idea that we might see something, taste something, feel something, smell something. It's putting all of those wonderful senses together and see how they work in our particular body. And, it's interesting, the more I talk with people, the more we don't set time aside to understand what the gratification is as a delight, something that tickles us, something that we can learn about in our body, and that it's a communication specific to you, that you acknowledge it, you discover it, and if you so choose to share it, then yay, you're sharing it. So we're looking at tactile. What delights your skin? What are your skin responses? Oils, lotions, wet or dry or cold or hot, or thinking about the type of touch. Is the touch feathery or intense? Is it a tickle or a pressure from fabrics, swatches, knits and lace and cotton, all of the different array of things that your body could experience. Well, what about water play, wax, honey, chocolate? How do these things feel on your body? And how can we create time where we get to have the experience to understand what those pleasures with our skin have to do with? When I think about auditory, and we talked a little bit about this with the space that we did about Daniel Craig dancing. Music is an important component. What delights our ears, what vibrates, resonates with us. Besides music, it could be, how someone whispers, the type of language they use, the chants that might be happening. All of these things come into play and activate different areas that come together in an integrated way to give you that sexual arousal and sexual um, pleasure. So I was thinking about tastes. What delights our tongue? And we're looking at chocolatey. So you can tell I'm in February. If I can't talk about chocolate in February, I don't know when you can. So we have that nice chocolate sensation. But what about things that are sweet or sour or bitter or spicy or wet or dry or hot or creamy or crisp or buttery? I mean, we have all these great adjectives about what's going on with the delight in our tongue, and how do we connect those things to other parts in the sensory world that then help activate the sexual pleasure that we might be feeling. So in the visual world, so we did auditory and we did tactile. So visual, what delights your eyes? What sights command your attention? Well, maybe you're someone who enjoys being out in nature. So you're looking specifically at your location. Or maybe, if you're not nature, maybe you like a constructed environment. Maybe it's about being around art. Maybe it's about clothes. Maybe it's about accenting bodies in a particular way. These may be things that delight you in your world for your sensory pleasure. So, olfactory, what delights your nose? What scent can evoke memories? What sense can help you ground a memory in present time? I'm sure Misha's all excited that she's going to be here in 2 weeks, and I'm going to make her walk downtown and we're going to stand outside the lavender shop. And we're just going to have this great sensory olfactory. Yes, lavender is just coming out of this building right onto the
I
yeah,
I did visit that shop the last time I was
I
there,
know.
and I lingered.
I love the lingering, but not everybody likes lavender. It may be sage or citrus or floral, vanilla, peppermint, sandalwood, pastries and coffee, the florist shop, specific types of flowers or specific herbs. I mean, you could tie the olfactory together with the taste component, and those things are going to work together. But, in that direction, we're taking a look at what sense evokes a Pavlovian body response of desire. So it's important that when we're doing our sensory pleasure investigation, we take our time aside and we take a look at a body scan, or we note all five of the sensory areas, and we can allow us to have more space to consider them and to see what our body really, really enjoys. So, those were the ideas that I wanted to present about sensory pleasure. And Ramon, I know you probably have some really cool things that you want to add into that idea. Welcome.
You're picking on me again. Look, I, it was not lost on me that twice,
She's really good at doing that.
and I love her for it. Um, twice I heard you say the word chocolate, and the syllables just drew out a little bit longer. than all the other stuff. But I think it's more than just um, the common assumption that chocolate has that effect. It's everything you just said. It's where are you at today? What and for me, both in day-to-day life and in writing, where is my excitation coming from today? You know, where are my body chemical levels? Where are my thoughts? Um, and run with that. But first off, just to be open to it. And you know, the world is pretty stressful and constantly demanding things. So I think it's carving out those little moments, as you said, whether it's on a trail, whether it's walking to a lavender shop. Let the body absorb and then see how the body wants to play that day.
Yeah, it's be with it too, because I think a lot of times we just go through it without thinking, oh, this is the experience that's happening in the moment. Let me capture that. And I have to tell you more about chocolate because it really fits for February beyond the idea of the Valentine time frame. My partner's birthday is in February, and one of my best writing buddies, his birthday is in February. In fact, their days are side by side, and we always get together for their birthday, which absolutely coincides with the Amelia Island Book Festival. So Misha is going to get to be here for the big celebration. Well, the big celebration includes one of our friends is gluten free. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a birthday cake that was going to fit for everybody that was here to eat. And I don't know how we managed to do this, but we found a gluten-free bakery that made something that was beyond decadent, triple death by chocolate kind of cake. And we got this cake. It must have weighed a ton. I couldn't even believe how heavy it was sitting it onto the table. And everybody that was there ate this cake and was like, this is unbelievable. We've never had an experience like this before. It was a shared experience. We spent so much time dissecting the chocolate, dissecting the texture, every element of the pleasure component was discussed there. And guess what? This will be the third year we've had this cake. We've already got the cake identified. And
Oh,
everybody asks, are we going to have the chocolate cake? It's the chocolate cake.
the
So we're
cake.
carrying this pleasure notion forward all the way around. It's like we've been talking about it for, 6 months. We're coming for the birthday time frame for the book festival. Are we going to have the chocolate cake? So we'll be asking Lisa what she's going to be thinking about this chocolate cake when she gets to have it.
Oh, well, absolutely. And
Oh, I'm sure I'll enjoy it with some coffee.
yes,
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
absolutely. And
And see, look at this. We're doing taste.
there you go. Well, as you know, I'm a recipe creator, and especially with gluten-free type things. So, you know, if you're going to have to go without gluten, or wheat or whatever, then you're just going to you might have to deal with chocolate. You know, it's a struggle, but we'll get by.
Well, it's interesting. I was thinking about all the different, pleasure components. And, you know, it's one of those things to say a lot of people may not think that they deserve to sit with pleasure. And, I look at it as a quality of life component. And even the New York Times had a story this week about why pleasure is important in our lives as a component of balance of all pleasure, not just sexual pleasure, but pleasure in general. And sometimes I think folks sit with the idea that they're not worthy of having something that feels good, that is for them in a very specific way. And then if we think about messages that we've received about sexuality specifically, pleasure, who's that for? Depending upon what your messages are about the role of sexuality, pleasure could be an item that was the furthest thing on the list and didn't even exist. So this could be someone opening up the idea of what true pleasure has to do with for them. And it's pretty exciting when I think about, for example, a course that I'm running right now for women, the idea of allowing space to occur where you get to investigate this for yourself. And you can choose that to be totally yours. And then you can choose or choose not to share with a partner about what that has to do with, but to give people permission for the idea of pleasure. I was looking on the Moan app yesterday, and one of the things that I saw that they were asking a question about, they're doing some polls there, was audio erotica. And so it was interesting to me to even, think about the pleasure related to I read the words, but I hear someone speaking the words and the way they say them, the way they sound, the language that's being used, all of those things could provide a level of pleasure that someone has never thought about before. Or if we're even looking in the mental components, I remember being at a couples retreat with Dr. David Snarch, and the highest level of intellectual capacity to discuss sexuality in just unbelievable ways is a pleasurable mental component. And when you take those kinds of things forward, you're again allowing that space and blowing life into areas that maybe you've not provided or been able to put in that direction before. And because we have so many different things that impact us, we may not feel like pleasure can be something that we focus on or make equal or align or balance in our world. And that's what having a conversation like this is about, is to say, hey, for this hour, we're going to be talking about how pleasure can be a helpful item for you and help you feel good about who you are.
Absolutely. And along those lines, sometimes taking away a sense is what's needed to immerse yourself in what the other senses can experience. And so that's absolutely a wonderful thing to kind of get your headspace in a place where you can enjoy the pleasures that are there in front of you.
And I think you're making a great point, because we know in a lot of writing and experience, people may use blindfolds to take the sight away in order to make the other four senses more crisp. And so maybe you take sight and sound away and all the things that you do to focus in on a particular sense that may be tactile. And it's interesting the different ways that you can come up with ideas to help you focus on areas that you would like to have more attention brought to. So, yeah, I like that. So, is there something specific you were thinking when you mentioned that?
Well, the easiest senses to take away are sight, smell, and hearing. But honestly, they all are. And I think, um, for me, again, I can get so wrapped up and start chasing squirrels so easily that even just when I'm out on a trail, sometimes I just can't manage to chill like I use that for. Um, I'll just sit there and I'll take away sight and just to limit the senses that are active so I can just get to the grounding I need, so that I can get back to a fresh view of things. Yeah.
And I like how what you're really doing is talking about the setting. So, I was on that trail, you were talking, I closed my eyes, and it was feeling the breeze that might be happening, listening to the rustle of the leaves along the way.
Mm-hmm.
How that affected my skin. And all of these things are how can you activate different areas that provide you pleasure, and you sit there and go, yeah, I really like that. This is something that connects me to myself.
It does. And then for me at least, if I ground myself in play, that whatever the engagement might be, even if it's with myself or and not with my partner, remember the play element of what I'm doing. That for me is real important, because
Yeah, and I
I
want
really can't discover as much as I want if I don't forget about should I be doing this, or what's going on here, and just immerse myself. I want to live the experience. I want to live the adventure, and then afterwards I can, like you said, there's some reassessment time or some reconnect time with myself or with the person I'm with, and there's time for that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're at the half hour point here, so I just wanted to recap that we were talking about sensory pleasure and how to, bring that forward in your life. And, there's some, I'm trying to see up here. Oh, I see Misha has put some lovely things for us up in the nest there. And Gora, I see you're here. I've got an ad up there for chemical sex. So we're dealing with chocolate in that lovely reading stories and getting information for our erotic pleasure needs. I'm happy to have folks come up and be part of the conversation. Ramon and I can go on for hours, but if you'd like to add something or have a question, feel free to request the mic and come on up. Know that we are recording and that this will be on my website and on FlowGen and on YouTube. But I'd love to have you come up. Misha, are you thinking about anything specific for the idea of changing your location from where you are to coming to the island? Do you think of pleasure when you come to the island?
Yeah. I renamed the island, remember?
Well, why don't you tell everybody what you renamed the island to?
I cannot.
You cannot. Well, she's in her other workspace, so I'll tell you that she named the island Smuttylicious Island. And I think the licious is an interesting component because the things that we've done here and the conversations. And I want you to know that, for people who do know who I am, where I live, and for people who don't know who I am, where I live, the funniest part is how my front porch plays a huge component in pleasure and what you're talking about, Ramon, and that true play sense, being in the moment, feeling what you're feeling and having the experience. Everybody wants to know when I have writers come because they know that we're going to be sitting on the front porch, and they say that our laughter component, the whole idea of the fun that we have, that it's infectious, and they want to come sit on the front porch too. They want to partake of whatever it is that we're doing in that process. And I think while it is a beautiful island and we have those lovely sea breezes and a delightful temperature most of the time, it's what you choose to surround yourself with, and that's people and places and things, and taking a look at all of the sensory components that tap into allowing you to feel good and putting pleasure as a number one item in your list. And I think when we talk with Lori Mintz to talk about the idea of equality and orgasm, there is a real difference just in terms of how the body's structured, to know that male genitals are out front. You've been handling them since you were born, and women's are tucked away and in a different location. And part of that process is being able to say that if we know the clitoral body is there strictly for pleasure, how do we have conversations where we can help everyone understand that knowing about your body, understanding how your body works, how it actually functions, can allow you to more clearly tap into the areas that are pleasureful for you in a sex positive kind of way? Because I know a lot of people might be uncomfortable to say, this is what turns me on and provides pleasure, versus someone else saying, this is, something else turns me on. And, to be in a space to support any individual in helping them to get to a place where it increases the quality of life for them with pleasure, and that it feels really good. And I was really taken last week when Gabby Jockers was talking about her work in boudoir photography. to say that the entire idea of creating a space for a person, and she talked about men and women coming in and doing boudoir photography, to be able to get in touch with all of the components of how they see themselves, how they experience themselves, to capture, visually, these are the kinds of things that I want to have in my setting. And when I'm in this particular setting, it makes me be the fuller person that I am. And when I'm that fuller person, wow, that true, genuine, and authentic, and just real pieces of you come forward. And those are the things that people are drawn to and want to connect with. And when you do that, you're sitting in your highest level of creativity, you're sitting in your highest level of higher self with your value system, and that whole be in the moment, be present, let everything around you be the teacher to help you with your pleasure practices. So, Ramon, I love how you think I'm picking on you, but you're the only speaker other than Misha. So, it's like, hey, you took the speaking, Mike. What can I say?
There, no, fine.
When you think about your particular structures for a practice, what have you found have been the helpful items to help create the space for you to explore pleasure on your terms?
That's a deep one. I tend to walk with sensuality on a daily basis. So I know it's always there. I know it's part of me. And
Well,
yeah,
tell me more about how you define that. I walk with sensuality.
yeah. So I I have a feeling, I have an awareness of the various elements of myself. And I also, as I am retired from a primary career, but it was very alpha type, especially towards the later parts of my career. Very, very aggressive managerial business related roles. And so, but I also honored the time to let my male sensual self have its moments. And I'm still that way. I will stop if I'm walking down the street, and if there is let's say a lavender shop, um, I may be walking
Let's say
by.
a lavender shop.
I may be walking by, and wherever my head is at that day, that waif of aroma latches onto me, and I'll stop and I'll spend time in there. It's funny you mentioned lavender because when I was at the chiropractor last week, she had me lay on my stomach and wanted to put a pillow down. And where my emotions and body and everything were that day, I said, "Do you have lavender?" And she looked at me, she goes, "You mean like a plant?" I said, "No, just like a spray or something." I said, "Can you just give it a spritz of lavender, please?" And she goes, "Why?"
Wow. Okay.
And I said, "That's what I need today. For you,
Yeah.
for you to be, for me to be able to absorb what you're trying to do for me today. I just sense I need a spritz of lavender on that pillow."
And you know what? You are making such a spectacular point that when we start to, and I love this, walk with sensuality, have the awareness of who you are as a person, then you can actively pick and choose speaking with someone else about what it is that would support you in that moment. And I love this. And, it's funny, I hadn't thought about this in years since you just made that comment you did about the lavender. I had a wonderful, wonderful friend when I was in Tallahassee who was a soap maker. And I absolutely loved going to her place where she did her business, and all of the, olfactory directions of, let's put these particular things together and see how you feel. And it's like certain people identify scent specifically with sexuality, but the more you can identify in, again, your walk with sensuality. My journey in the world is a walk with sensuality to figure out what provides me pleasure and how I can then share that when I choose to do so in a more intimate way with a partner. So that was delightful.
Well, thank you. I was also just reminded the last time I was hiking, uh, there's there's a plant in the local mountains and hills called wild cucumber, and I noticed it was just starting to make its way. And I kind of looked at the admired the growth of that, started to walk, and I said, no, 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 you didn't fill I didn't fill my soul as well as I wanted to with that. And I hiked back down about 50 yards to it again and hung around with it to get as much as I truly wanted from
Yeah.
interacting with it. And said, now I'm ready. Now, I will park the busy world for a moment if there's an experience that I want to immerse with.
Yeah, and it's again you taking note and saying, I didn't get enough. I need to go back in this location and get this for myself. Well, Ramon, guess what? I have another person on the speaking
Oh,
stage.
good.
Oh, good.
I'm kidding.
Hi, Rachel. How are you today?
Hey, I'm good. Good to see everybody here. And I always love your topics. So,
Oh, well, thank
hi,
you.
Misha. Thank you for the heart. It's just interesting listening. And, I think sometimes we get so caught up in our day to day lives as well as our work lives, or if you're a writer, your writing life. And so we can forget little things that can help really calm us and relax us and allow us to have that sensory pleasure. So, so little things like my guy is really good about like running me a bath or coming in and lighting a candle in my office, and I forget to do these things, but he's very conscious of that, not just because it, tends to have a calming effect, but also it's a form of self care. And so I think that's a really important way to look at it, because that's a part of being human is our sexuality. And by turning that off completely, we're not allowing ourselves to even explore things that may feel comfortable, like lighting a candle or incense, or having a nice drink of a hot tea on a cold day. Things like that give us a huge amount of sensory pleasure, and it doesn't have to be sexual if that's something that someone's uncomfortable with.
And Rachel, and you're making several great points in that direction, is that, we can within our day, and you have your important person helping you create that ritual for you, is that if we can build in touchstones during our day to help us, do any of the sensory stuff, as Ramon said, walk with sensuality, the awareness, if we can actually have touchstone components that resonates in such a way that we stop and we now are adding this into our life, then it's just the everyday process that has created the space for pleasure, which will make it a lot easier to step into the sexuality world when you're ready for the pleasure to be specifically there. And I think with our busy, hurried lives, forget you, that's what you said, we forget to do some of those things. And some of us, it may not even be forget that nobody's ever said that it's okay for us to be in that space or to have the sensory components that we can identify, provide pleasure, and then help us move forward in our day. So, in the course that I'm teaching, one of the biggest points is about what that ritual has to do with, and looking at your physical and your emotional and your mental and your spiritual, and seeing which areas need particular items for you. And if we start with sensory, then we can get information about that and blow a little more life into that area to help us move forward with that. So are you thinking about having a specific ritual or touchstone that you do? I know you do for me, because when I see Pip, I always want to think about, wow, that would feel really good if I was, giving Pip a nice pet.
Aw, he is such a cute floof, but I also feel like he came into our lives. He adopted us. He showed up. For anyone who doesn't know, Pip is our cat, and he's a Lynx Point Siamese, not Siamese in the traditional sense. So he's very quiet, super mellow, and I take Pip petting breaks because I lay my head on his little body. He's constantly purring, and it's so soothing, and I feel like we become synchronous in a way. And I think anyone can do that with any kind of pet, or even person in your life. One of the things that I struggled with when I was married for over 20 years was my ex would only touch me or kiss me or hold my hand when he wanted sex. And so I would say to him, I need, as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, I can't constantly feel like prey. So I need you to just hold my hand and it not lead to something. And he couldn't get that through his head. For him, it was just not comfortable to be affectionate unless it led to sex. And I think that's something that I learned as an adult because I didn't really understand what happened when I was a kid. And it affects us in ways we don't realize. So understanding that I have a voice and I can express my needs and they will be met was a huge turning point for me, when I made the decision to divorce my ex. And now I'm with a man who's very loving and affectionate and sexy and romantic and all that wonderful stuff. And it's not like it's first love. I'm not in the 3-month infatuation phase, right? We've been together almost 9 or 10 years at this point. So I just think knowing and owning my desire was a really huge turning point for me in my life.
And you're also identifying the idea that you were clear about what you needed in the same way that Ramon said he passed by this one plant and said, I didn't get enough of that. Let me go back. Sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to just say, wait a minute, I didn't get everything I needed and I'm first and I'm putting the oxygen mask on me and then I'm going to share information. But if you're not willing to meet me in that space, is this going to be helpful to me in what my entire life has to do with? And so I loved how you said that because, we look at our physical responses and our emotional responses and mental and spiritual, and we want to see how they all interact together. And it may be just as you were describing, the touch of a hand for one person means one thing and for another person means another, but you need to stay anchored in what that means for you in the sensory world. And I really appreciate you sharing that. So that's good. So we have about 15 more minutes. Is there anybody else? Oh, my buddy just came up on stage. Hello, Pixie.
Well, hello, Donna. Hi, Misha. Hi, guys. How's it going?
It's going really good today. I'm all excited that you popped in here, especially for sensory pleasure.
Oh, I love to add music and feelings and leather is so fun. It it is. There's a lot of things that you can get from just being able to touch and feel things that just really start like the engine. I know for some guys they really like cars, and there's a lot of interesting things that guys enjoy. But as women, sometimes it's what makes you feel sexy that brings it into the bedroom for others.
And let me tell you what you just did, Pixie, because it's cooler than cool. The absolute sound when you said leather was the true delight that you experience from it. That came out of you in that direction. And it's a wonderful example of when we are clear about the things that tap into the real, authentic place of you as that sensual creature, then I'm resonating. I'm in that place, and other people can feel those wonderful sensations. And the more time that we can spend having experiences to discover, what those things are, and, tying it all together. I was watching a movie last night, and the movie had an interesting musical song at the end, and the voice of the singer had this wonderful, almost felt like I was describing the sounds that the magic wand Hitachi vibrator makes. They were grumbly and low, and it just hit you, right in the solar plexus for, man, this voice, let me just sail right here on this particular note, this particular vibration. Everything about it was good. And in that moment, it hit me. This is not the first time that a sound to that level has affected you. And I went back to 1987 to a song called At That Moment by Billy Vera and the Beaters. And oh my goodness, he has this same rasp, same note, same direction. So I think that the more that we can identify which are the things that really tap into us, and can you feel it? I'm in that moment right this minute having the conversation. And when we can identify them so real and raw, and that they activate in us, and we carry that forward from life here, extrapolate and move it into sexuality, just imagine what the pleasure component's going to be at that point in time.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. There are so many different aspects to sensory pleasure that we ourselves just enjoy. And when you do enjoy something like that and you want to share it with others, it can be such a pleasurable moment, and it can just take you into the past. It propel you into the future. It's the things that you get excited about. So I love this discussion.
Oh, well, thank you. And, I was thinking, by the way, everybody, make sure everybody that's speaking, you need to follow these folks. They are in their own right leaders in the things that they are doing. And it's so exciting to see what they are. And Pixie, I have to tell you that I have been cracking up on your comments about wearing your breasts in a particular way. Your how they fit into particular things, and the pictures that you're doing for your spicy content. You are so on, and I love everything that you do in that
I'm
world.
playing a dangerous game. Like I don't want to like just bear it all, because I feel like you got to hold something back if you ever want to uh, make money with the content you're doing. So I just want to tease and titillate and and really work the brain pan of people that are following me. But some people, they don't read my bio before they start following me. They just follow, and then they see something shock and awe. Well, sweetheart, I kind of want to put like I don't want to warn people who I am before they start following me. So so a lot of the times I'm I'm playing with what I enjoy. I enjoy posting. I enjoy posting about myself. I enjoy posting about the things that give me pleasure. I enjoy, being this sexual being, and I also like knowing that the people that do follow me, that interact with me, they understand what I'm trying to do, or hopefully they do. And if they don't, they quickly scurry away.
I love it. And you know what? The other thing that taps in for me as you're talking about that is you have and embodied the notion of what the true bringing yourself out to the world, that tease, that burlesque, all of those things as a true part of who you are. And that so many of us can take lessons in what that has to do with, because naturally, the way cultures have put us together with negative messages, we may never bring that part forward unless we have a leader that shows us, here's what it looks like when you can do this. Here's, how it is. Here's Dr. J talking about sexuality at lunchtime, in the daylight, making it be a normative conversation of everyday life. And, all of the topics that we can talk about might have a impact. And, all the years in providing therapy, I know that there'll be things that people heard me say. They'll hold on to a business card for 7 years before they would, be able to say, I have the gumption, I can move forward and do this for my own self. I will contact this person. I will do exploration. And so that's why it's important for all of us to be out here continuing the mission of pleasure is important, sexuality is a quality of life for all of us, and doing things that delight us in all of the items that I started talking about from the Global Advisory Board for Sexual Health when I started this, that, it's important for physical and psychological satisfaction and enjoyment and our self-determination and working consent and being safe, but making sure we're doing what we want in privacy, and then feeling that confident, I am comfortable in my own skin and I can move this forward, and then to be able to communicate and negotiate the specific things like Rachel was talking about in her example. All of those things are important for us to be doing. So Pixie, you're just a gem, your little Leo self.
Oh, I'm wild. And there are no rules here on Twitter. Everybody wants to do the social norms. There's nothing wrong with expressing yourself, telling the stories that only you can bring forward, shining light on darkness, being able to allow yourself to have a platform. Everybody in this room can take a bit of this and spread it out throughout the day. Tell people about conversations. I was talking to my husband about you, Donna, and a lot of this is just the first step in more communication with others. Make sure you're
I
following,
love
yeah.
it.
Make sure you're following Dawn, and make sure you're following a lot of these people in the room, because not only do they share in this space, but they go into other spaces, and there's just so much fantastic conversation that happens.
And you are the podcast queen in helping everybody get connected and collaborate. I was talking all about you to a group of romance authors the other day. So we're doing this collaboration, bringing things back and forth in the important world that we're doing. So at the end here, Pixie, you got one last thing that you want to say, and then Ramon, and then Rachel?
Donna, if you need help with a collaboration for your writers, get with me and I can help you set up a post for that.
Oh, sounds great. Thank you, Pixie. Ramon, final words.
Yeah, I was reminded just briefly in talking when I was working with high school kids and talking to the parents at a session and about when was the last time your child saw you play? Because, as parents, sometimes we're afraid to let our guard down. And so even to incorporate play and let your kids see you be playful can be such a huge step in connecting with them as well as connecting with yourself.
I love it. And you just reminded me, when I visited Austin, one of my former students was in Austin, and there's a place called Rainy Street that has these very interesting bars and restaurants. And one of them was like a playground. Everything about it was games and do things. And they had this big slide. And the big deal was you're supposed to hold your drink and go down the slide and end up standing up and not spill your drink. And I was cracking up because, I'm watching everybody do it. And my son says, well, if my cousin can do it, you can sure do it, Mom. And I was laughing, and my student said, yeah, I can't do that. And I looked at my student, I said, well, if I do it, don't you think you can do it? And so I said, hand me that glass. And I went down the slide and I nailed it at the bottom like I was doing an Olympic stick coming off of the It's like nothing spilled in my cup, and everybody in the whole place was clapping. It's like, yeah, it is important that play and pleasure in that direction comes through too. Go ahead, Mish.
Making that landing, is that why
Yeah.
you fall down mountains today?
Who knows why I fall down mountains, but that landing was pretty darn good. Rachel, go ahead.
You crack me up. I would just say for anyone who, we're on Wednesday, we're on Hump Day. I will be doing book marketing chat later if anyone's interested in attending. And my guest is literary agent Terry Wolf. So she'll be talking about specifics. If you need advice on a query or a proposal, she even is offering a free critique. If anyone is interested, put your name in, DM me, and I'll make sure that your name is put in the hat. And the other thing really is just do something sensual for yourself today from a sensory perspective. Light a candle, go for a walk, have a cup of hot tea or ice cold water. Enjoy and feel those things in the moment, and I guarantee it will calm down your entire nervous system.
Oh, Rachel, that is spectacular. We all need to support each other in being that touchstone today so that we can do the things that are going to provide delight. Go ahead, Mish.
Just a quick reminder to everyone, because it's not often that I say this anymore, but it still rings true. Love yourself first. You are enough, and you are wonderful inside and out, no matter what anyone else says. So have a great day, all.
Oh, that is perfect, Mish. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today. This has been great that you've taken time out to delight yourself in the process of learning something new. I especially want to thank my was definitely lovely, but semi-silent co-host Mish. And please follow all the speakers, folks in the room here. It's really important. Mish has put up in the nest. You can follow my newsletter and my YouTube channel. But I also want to remind you that tomorrow at 4 p.m. on the Moan app, I will be reading erotica, and I'm going to do my story from Best Women's Erotica Volume 3 called Infused Leather. So that's at 4 o'clock, and that's also over your head in the link there. And next week, I don't know what's going to be on the schedule, but the following week we're having, and Rachel, I wanted to make sure you heard this, we're having a book launch celebration party for the most renowned editor in erotica history. Rachel Kramer Bussel's book, How to Write Erotica, is coming out, and yours truly was interviewed for the book. So I'm really excited about that and to support her in this particular endeavor as she's going to support me when mine comes out. So that will be on February the 15th. So go ahead and mark your calendars for that. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day, and take Rachel's comment. Go do something that's delight. Follow Ramon in his walk with sensuality. Deal with your awareness. Feel your awareness and use that tease and burlesque that Pixie puts out there for all of us to help us stay centered in what we're doing. Delight, everybody. We'll see you next week. Have a great day.